Hi, boys and girls. Welcome back. I'm going to read another one of my favorite books. It's Nefertiti, the Spidernaut. And this is a true story about the jumping spider who learned to hunt in space. It's written by Darcy Patterson and illustrated by Valeria Tinius. You ready for our riddle? What did the astronaut say when he bumped into the moon? Think about it. Nefertiti, the Spidernaut, written by Darcy Patterson, illustrated by Valeria Tinius. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Early in 2012, in a greenhouse near Yarnell, Arizona, a Johnson jumping spider laid an egg sac. What is the egg sac? Can you find it? There's a spider, so maybe it must be nearby. About the same time, Stephanie Countryman was looking for a jumping spider to send on a space mission. Scientists hypothesized or predicted that jumping spiders would not be able to hunt in the microgravity of the International Space Station. On Earth, a spider would jump to catch its food and then land on the ground. On the International Space Station, however, there is little gravity to pull them back down. Instead, the spider would just float. The egg sac arrived in Stephanie's office in Boulder, Colorado on Friday afternoon in February 2012. The package included a bag of fruit fly larvae for the spiderlings to eat. Stephanie placed the spider egg sac and the open bag of fruit fly larvae into a covered box for the weekend. On Monday morning, Stephanie was horrified. Dozens of the tiny spiderlings, just the size of a pinhead, had hatched. Almost all the fruit flies had hatched too, and the mass of flies had killed almost all the spiderlings. Only 4 jumping spiders were still alive for Stephanie to raise. One day, Stephanie had to choose a spider for the space mission. She chose the largest female spider because her red abdomen was easy to see. She was also the most active spider. They named her Nefertiti, after an ancient Egyptian queen. Before the experiment could fly on the International Space Station, the spider had to be tested in her special habitat or home. The spider's home measured 6 inches wide by 5 inches high by 3 inches deep, about the size of a man's hand. The spider habitat had a chamber for water. Other chambers held fruit flies, which Nefertiti would hunt and eat for her 100 days in space. Spider's habitat, approximately life size. A, that's the water chamber. B, that's where the fruit flies are. And C, the areas for the spider to hide. For the first survival test, Nefertiti lived for a week with no light. That was hard because she only hunted by day. Later, she spent a week in extreme cold. The light and cold test didn't bother Nefertiti, so scientists agreed Nefertiti would be the Spidernaut. In July, Stephanie fed Nefertiti until she was gorged and her abdomen was big. She wouldn't eat again until she reached the space station. Stephanie took Nefertiti in her habitat and flew from Colorado to Japan and then traveled to the island of Tanegashima. On July 17th, Nefertiti was handed over to the Japanese Space Agency. They packed Nefertiti and her equipment first into container number 1094 and then onto the HTV-3 unmanned cargo carrier. Rain poured on July 21st, but the HTV-3 launched anyways. Stephanie wondered if the Spidernaut would return to Earth alive. Six days later, HT-3 berthed or attached into the International Space Station. The spider experiment was unpacked. Nefertiti got her first look at Sunita Suni Williams, captain of the U.S. Navy, the astronaut who would care for her. First, Suni unpacked her and set up her habitat. Nefertiti and the fruit flies floated about. As usual, Nefertiti spun a silk line and attached to the wall as a tether. She leapt for a fruit fly. On Earth, Nefertiti just jumped in an arc and almost never missed her prey. But in the microgravity of the International Space Station, she hung almost weightless in midair, just as the scientists had predicted. Hungry, she tried again and missed. For 3 hours a day, Stephanie watched a video feed from the space station and worried. Clinging to the balsa wood walls, Nefertiti ran around looking for food. July 24th. Nefertiti stalked a fruit fly. This time, instead of leaping in an arc, she lunged in a straight line. She caught the fruit fly. The hypothesis was wrong. The Johnson jumping spider did adapt to microgravity. Nefertiti learned to jump in a new way to catch her food. Even more surprising, a few days later, Stephanie saw Nefertiti hunt again. This time she anchored her drag line and leapt for a fruit fly mid-air. She caught the fly, and like a bungee cord, her drag line pulled her back to the habitat's wall. Nefertiti was hunting as no other jumping spider had ever hunted before. After 2 weeks of videotaping, the experiment was officially over. However, it would be 11 more weeks before the space capsule could return Nefertiti to Earth. Suni kept Nefertiti's habitat near her work desk. She often stopped to watch the spider hunt and eat, and the spider often stopped to watch Suni moving around. Sometime late into September, Nefertiti caught and ate the last fruit fly in her habitat. Now she lived on just water. Meanwhile, the International Space Station flew around the Earth. In all, Nefertiti circled the Earth about 1,584 times. Over a month later, on October 27th, Suni packed Nefertiti into her habitat for the return trip to Earth. Suni wrote in her NASA blog, "Hang in there are many fruit flies on Earth." The Dragon capsule splashed down on October 28th in the Pacific water near Long Beach, California. When Stephanie opened the habitat, Nefertiti was alive, but barely. Somehow, during her return trip, her water compartment had been closed off. Immediately, Stephanie gave Nefertiti a wet cotton ball, and the spider drank and drank. Back in Colorado, Nefertiti had one last test. Would she be able to readapt to Earth's gravity and hunt? She'd lived over 40 days with no food. Her abdomen was almost flat. A fruit fly buzzed around the spider's habitat. Nefertiti anchored a dragline and sprang. She overshot the fly and slammed into the front window of her habitat. She tumbled to the floor on her back. She righted herself again, lunged for the fruit fly. She missed. Again, she pounced and missed. Desperately hungry, Nefertiti tried to stalk the fruit fly. She crept forward 1 step, 2 steps. Then she leapt and ate. Nefertiti had relearned how to hunt on Earth. For several weeks, Stephanie fattened up the Spidernaut with small crickets. 9-month-old Nefertiti finally had enough to eat. But a famous Spidernaut couldn't live on Stephanie's kitchen counter. On November 29th, Nefertiti flew again. This time she traveled to Washington, D.C., where she could live in the O. Orkin Insect Zoo at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. Sadly, on December 3rd, keepers found Nefertiti, the Spidernaut, dead of old age. In her 10-month life, Nefertiti traveled over 42 million miles. She hunted on Earth and surprised scientists by hunting successfully in space. Her life and journey built excitement for the space program, and perhaps along the way she taught some people to appreciate the simple beauty of a spider. And that is the end. I love that story because Nefertiti proved the scientists wrong. A little spider. She was able to hunt in microgravity and on Earth. She could return and do it both ways. It's a pretty amazing experiment and spider. Okay, you ready for the answer to our riddle? What happened when the astronaut bumped into the moon? He apologized. Get it? Because the first spacecraft were called the Apollo. It was the Apollo series, so I apologize. Silly. I miss you. I love you. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye, boys and girls.